everybody? Manny here once again. Welcome back to DFS Zone, your source for daily fantasy sport lineup advice for the NFL and the NBA. Got a brand new video for you guys today, week 7 of the NFL quarterback picks. But before I get started with the video, I appreciate you guys drop a like. And if you're new to the channel, have not as of yet, subscribe to the community here at DFS Zone. That little subscribe red button down there, please click on that, subscribe now, and right next to it on the right hand side is that little bell icon. Make sure you turn that on. This way you don't miss out on any of my NFL or NBA lineup advice videos as well as live shows. All right, so with that being said, week 7 of the NFL, we got quarterbacks this week. I have about 3 quarterbacks I like. There's a couple that are in the lower tier that I think are possible good plays that I will probably touch upon more on Saturday during the live show. But like always, every week before I go over the plays I have, I definitely like to give a recap of the quarterbacks I had last week that I selected and I gave you guys on the video. I gave you last week Matt Ryan. He put up 27.46 fantasy points here on Fanduel. Great week for Matt Ryan. So if you had Matt Ryan, you obviously did pretty well. My next guy was Kirk Cousins. He put up 19.6 fantasy points. Not too bad also for Kirk Cousins. I think I did pretty well as far as the selections with quarterbacks last week. Then I gave you Jameis Winston. He put up 32.9. He had a massive. He came through. He definitely balled his butt off last week against Atlanta. Great matchup for him, and he turned up and put up very big numbers. So 32.9 fantasy points. So if you took Jameis Winston, you did well as well. All right, so those were the 3 guys that I went over last week. And now this week, I'm going to go over the ones that I think are pretty good. But I'm going to start off with Drew Brees. But Drew Brees here at 8,600, I like the idea of him going up against Baltimore. Because Baltimore, even though they're pretty good, their numbers are solid. I don't think that they haven't really faced anything like Drew Brees this year. And I really am interested and very intrigued, especially on DK. Not here on FanDuel. I'm not going to have exposure to him here. And if you are a FanDuel player, just remember, I'm recommending Drew Brees, on DK. 5,700 on DK. I don't know how they got that pricing. I guess they're figuring the matchup is going to be too great for Drew Brees. But until Baltimore is able to shut down an individual and an offense like Brees' offense in New Orleans, then I'll say, hey, you know, Baltimore is really for real. Right now, up to this point in time, Baltimore's defense is pretty darn good. But I still want to see if they can handle Drew Brees. So on DK, I love Drew Brees. But we're going to go over his numbers here on FanDuel because I like working out of this platform. So 331.6 yards on average per game for Mr. Drew Brees this year. 13 TDs, averaging 25 fantasy points. And like I always tell you guys, you look to see if he's somewhere near those fantasy points. And he has been. He had this dud game here against the Giants, but 27 this past week against Washington, 40 the week before, 2 weeks before that. So he's pretty solid. I love the fact that he's had he's had 363 plus games thus far this year. Had 3 touchdowns this past week. Look at that completion percentage. Only threw 29 passes against the Redskins and had 26 or 29 with 3 touchdowns. So, I mean, the numbers are fantastic. So, again, like, you know, I mean, New Orleans as an offense comes in. They are 3rd in the NFL in passing yards per game, 321 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8.7 yards per catch, and that's the 5th best in the NFL. So he's definitely hitting his targets, getting some good yardage. Inside the 20 in the red zone, 64% completion percentage for Mr. Brees, 31 of 46, 181 yards, 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions thus far in the red zone. Inside the 10, just as efficient, 73% completion percentage, 14 of 19, 62 yards, 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. And again, like what I love about it is, man, he has the upside. So you can see he can almost hit 40. He's had 31 before. His offense is really clicking right now. They just got back Ingram. It opens up the doors for the play action and for him to use Kamara a lot in the passing game as well. It's going to be really interesting this week on how Baltimore puts a scheme together to neutralize Drew Brees or the running game of Kamara and Mark Ingram. I'm looking forward to seeing that. But right now, I'm banking on Drew Brees. 5,700 on DK. You must have some Drew Brees. Baltimore numbers coming in 2nd in pass defense, like I mentioned earlier. But again, like I said, they haven't faced anything like Drew Brees and his offense. 188 yards per game. All right. That is the least amount in the NFL. It's tied for the least amount in the NFL. 6 yards per catch is also the least in the NFL. So thus far, everything good going for Baltimore. Again, I'm willing to take a stab on Drew Brees, especially on DK for 5,700. You can't pass him up. That is too cheap for Drew Brees. All right. As far as Baltimore fantasy points against quarterbacks, it's the fewest in the NFL as well. Okay, those numbers I think will change if Drew Brees puts up some big numbers this week. 13.8 DK and 13.3 Fanduel points. The quarterbacks have rushed 10 rushes for 74 yards against this team. And this team in the red zone, as far as Baltimore, they've been pretty good, 41%, neutralizing the opposition to 41.6% conversion ratio in the red zone, which is pretty surprising. But again, you're going to go up against a team like New Orleans, man. It's going to be really, really tough. These guys are pretty darn good. So, again, DK, Drew Brees is definitely a lock at 5,700. On FanDuel, you could put him in there if you wish to. It's a little too expensive for me on FanDuel this week, but he is definitely in play. My next guy is definitely Jared Goff. I think Jared Goff is in a good spot going up against San Francisco. He's going back to California, staying in that nice warm climate, not too far away from his home field. Did have a game last week where he really didn't have to do a whole lot. I mean, he wasn't that great, but he wasn't that bad. But then again, he has Todd Gurley, and last week Todd Gurley had a field day, and Mr. Goff didn't really have to go and throw 35, 36 passes or anything like that. So he had 14 of 28, 201 yards, 8.4 fantasy points. That is really, if that's going to be his low, it's probably going to be the lowest that he's going to get this year. I mean, 321.3 yards per game, 12 TDs, 21 fantasy points per game. As you can see, he hasn't hit 21 in the last 2 games. I'm not concerned. 39, 26. Good offense on this team. He's got great weapons. Everybody's back. All the guys that were in concussion protocol did play last week. And if it wasn't for Gurley having the monstrous game that he had, I'm sure he would have been able to pass the ball well against those guys and be able to hit his receivers. But he's got the offense, and I think this week he's in a good spot against a team that really has some issue with the pass game. So I expect a bounce back. This team as an offense is 4th in the NFL in pass offense, 68.7% completion percentage, 9.9 yards per catch. All right. Inside the 20, red zone opportunities, 25 of 40 for Mr. Goff, 171 yards, 8 touchdowns, has coughed up 2 interceptions. Inside the 10 has been better, 11 of 22, 51 yards, 6 TDs, 1 interception. So he's had 1 inside the 20, and the other one was inside the 10. Going up against San Fran, San Fran is 26th in pass defense, 279 yards per game. They allowed 14 TDs, man, and we got a guy who's thrown 12, so there is some room for, a possible couple of touchdowns here for him. 7.4, they have allowed 14 touchdowns, like I said. That's the 5th most in the NFL, and they're giving up 7.4 yards per catch, and they're going up against a team that is averaging 9.9 yards per catch. So definitely a little wiggle room there, as well as gaining some more yardage per completion. Versus quarterbacks, San Francisco 7th in the NFL in fantasy points given up to QBs. They've given up 291.6 yards per game, 14 touchdowns and 1 interception. The quarterbacks have rushed 20 times for 69 yards against them for 29.7 DK and 22 FanDuel points. In the red zone, San Francisco, 60% of the time the opponents have gotten in the red zone, they have scored. They've been there 4 opportunities per game, and they've given up 2 touchdowns and a field goal. The Rams' red zone offense is at 56.6% conversion ratio. They get 5 opportunities per game. Can you believe that? 5 opportunities they need to get this ball in the red zone, and not only get in the red zone, which they have, but they need to get it in the end zone. 5 opportunities per game, only 2 touchdowns and a field goal. You would expect a bit more with Jared Goff and his receivers with Woods and Cooper Kupp, and on top of that have Todd Gurley. I mean, come on. You got to get in the end zone a lot more than that. But definitely Jared Goff is in a good situation against San Francisco this week. I definitely love Jared Goff. My last quarterback, probably somebody I would not normally call upon, but I did call him out a couple weeks ago, and he did play well. I definitely, there's a couple guys I'm going to get by here. I'm going to skip by here that are definitely guys that are in pretty good situations. Got Kirk Cousins, who throws a tons of balls. doesn't have much of a running game. He throws a lot of passes. He's going up against my Jets. I think the Jets are going to do fine here at home this week against Minnesota. It's going to definitely be a test to see how they neutralize this Minnesota offense and Adam Thielen and company. But Kirk Cousins may be someone to consider here at 8. And then you have Jameis Winston, who had a monster game last week, is going up against a pretty weak passing defense in Cleveland. So I'm going to look into Winston a little bit more. Maybe by Saturday night's live show, I may have some more information on him. And I'm keeping an eye on him. He's someone that I have in my radar. I think I may want to have some exposure to Mr. Winston this week. Other than that, I do like, and I think I will have exposure to a little bit of Joe Flacco as well against New Orleans. New Orleans definitely struggle in the pass game. They definitely have a strong front to in neutralizing the run. But their pass defense is definitely an area of concern. So Joe Flacco may be able to get something going there, and he's also playing at home. But I want to talk about Mitchell Trubisky here against New England. We know New England's defense is not the best. They definitely struggle in both pass defense and run defense. But Mitch Trubisky has been pretty solid the last 2 weeks, man. His numbers have been just going up, and up. He has 252.2 yards per game. He's 7,500 here. He's 5,600 on DK. So on either one of the sites, I think he's good to go. 12 touchdowns, like I said, 21, pretty much a 22-spot average on fantasy points, which is pretty darn good for a second-year quarterback. 28 and 43 in the last 2 games. He has crushed that 22 spot in the last 2 games. He's thrown over 300 yards in 2 games straight, and he has thrown 9 touchdowns with 1 interception. Those numbers look pretty darn good to me going up against New England. 60% completion percentage in the red zone for Trubisky, 125 yards, 9 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Inside the 10, he's 9 of 15 for 41 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he has gotten 6 out of his 9 inside the 10. The Bears' offense in the red zone, 55.6%. Conversion ratio as far as getting in the end zone. They need to get better in that ratio. 3.5 opportunities, 3.5 opportunities pretty much per game, and only getting 2 TDs in the end zone. They got to definitely get better there. But they're going up against New England, and New England is at 276.6 yards per game. They're 21st in pass defense. 63% completion percentage to opposing quarterbacks. 269 yards per game, 15 touchdowns. That's the 15 touchdowns is the 3rd most in the NFL this year. That is a lot of touchdowns to give up versus quarterbacks. 8th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. 19 rushing attempts for 101 yards as well. They have not let a quarterback rush in one for a touchdown. There's 0 TDs, but they've given up 22.6 DK and 20.8 Fanduel points thus far this year. In the red zone, they have done fairly well against opposition in the red zone. Their opposition has been only converting 50% of the time in the red zone against the Patriots. 3.5 opportunities per game and only coughing up a touchdown and a field goal per game. So New England really been a little bit stingy in the red zone. But again, I think it's just a great matchup for Trubisky. There's opportunity there to move the ball against New England and be able to utilize not only Mr. Cohen out of the backfield is all of a sudden is really becoming a good target for Trubisky as a dual threat back on top of Allen Robinson and company. I like the Bears in this game. I think New England is going to probably come in there and beat Chicago. But if Chicago is going to play well, if they're going to stay in this game, Mitchell Trubisky is going to have to throw the ball well. And I think he has a shot to with that defense that the Patriots have. And those are the 3 guys I'm looking at. Like I said, I also kind of have my eye on the radar. Like I said, Flacco, Jameis Winston, and then a little bit lower here, I'm keeping my eye on Baker Mayfield, and even my own Sam Darnold of my New York Jets has played well in the last 2 weeks. So he may be someone that I may consider to throw in there as a value play on Saturday night. Again, these are the players I'm looking at and I really like right now. Those are the 3. By Saturday, I may replace one like I did last week. I replaced the running back, which you'll see in the running back video. I replaced one of my running backs for a different running back on a Saturday show, and that running back did fairly well, and I'm glad that I made the switch. But again, it's going to happen. First look. I kind of like those matchups. I kind of like those 3 players. Come on. Make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. Please drop a like. At the same time, make sure you come to the Saturday show. We'll discuss it. We'll open up the slate a little bit more. I'll probably have more information on any possible plays, and that may include some of these players that I just mentioned here that I got my radar on. All right, guys? Other than that, that's basically all I got for quarterbacks this week. I wish you guys all a lot of luck. You have a great night, and I'll see you guys on the next video.